Welcome back to my channel, Beautiful Minutia. If you're new here, my name is Tiffany, and today I wanted to share with you the TBR that I have planned for February. So my actual TBR is not incredibly long, which is great because I'm trying not to have like too many things going on at once, but because I am participating in Febregency and I do have some ongoing buddy reads and then like reads for my Patreon and my in-person book club, I do have a lot of books this month that I'm actually planning to read with people, which was something I was trying not to do quite as frequently in 2025, but these are all books that I'm like really excited to read and like really in the mood to read, so I don't think that it's gonna be an issue. Let's go ahead and start with my Febregency TBR, which actually, if you saw my Febregency announcement, this is going to be a little bit redundant, and that's okay. You can skip over this section if you want to, or just continue to watch on. So the first book that I am reading for Febregency is actually one that I'm also going to be teaching to my British literature class, which means I will be starting it in January, but I'll probably read the bulk of it in February. But that book is Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen. I'm really excited to reread this one. It has been a couple of years since I read it. It was my favorite in high school, and when I reread it probably 4-ish years ago, I didn't love it as much. I didn't like dislike it, don't get me wrong. It's still a solid book. But it didn't live up to my high school remembrance of it. So I'm excited to read it now, like 4 years later, and see how I feel about it. Sense and Sensibility focuses very much on a sister relationship, which is really interesting. The sisters are polar opposites, and so I'm excited to delve into this and delve into it with my class. I think I have some boy students who are slightly concerned about it because the reputation of Jane Austen kind of being like girly books, because the adaptations are usually quite sweeping and romantic, but I'm definitely going to be heavily focusing on like the satire and societal commentary that Jane Austen was making at the time, not simply the romance. The next book I'll be reading for Febregency is Ivanhoe by Sir Walter Scott. This will be my very first Sir Walter Scott book, so I'm excited about that. I think I have 2 or 3 other books by him on my shelf. So he's an author that I have wanted to get to for quite some time, and I chose Ivanhoe because I think that this is probably one of his more well-known or iconic works, so I'm really looking forward to that. This is also on my classics TBR for the year, and I did that intentionally. I purposely chose a Regency era book for February so I would already be in sync with Febregency. And the last book that I'm planning to read in its entirety for Febregency is The Italian by Anne Radcliffe. I'm really excited about this one because I loved The Mysteries of Udolpho when I read that a couple of years ago, so I'm really hoping that I love The Italian just as much. I don't really know much about the plot of this one. I'm sure it's quite sensational, and I'm really hoping for some really good story in there, but I really hope that the writing is just as lovely as it was in The Mysteries of Udolpho, because I loved like the travel and nature writing in The Mysteries of Udolpho, which was a surprise for me. I wasn't expecting that, and that is part of the reason why it was pushed over the top into like a book that I just absolutely adored. So I hope that there will be some of that in here. But I think that like some of the crux of the story is that there's this monk that kidnaps a girl. So it already sounds like it's going to be a fun time. I almost forgot to mention that I'm going to be reading this with Dia and Stephanie. So super excited about that. The last thing that I will be dipping in and out of for Febregency, but I'm not planning to read in its entirety, is I have this lovely edition of romantic poetry that my friend Joanna purchased for me, and it's just so pretty. I love it so much. But I dip in and out of this pretty much every February because the romantic poetry was written during the Regency time period, and I can just read a little bit here and there. And last year I spent a lot of time with Lord Byron and Percy Shelley because those were some of Jenny's favorite poets, Jennifer Brooks. And last year we loved Jenny during February. So it was like perfect for that. So I am going to be dipping in and out of it again for Febregency. I have a few other group reads or buddy reads that I have planned for the month of February. So in January on my Patreon, we ended up reading a Russian classic together, a Dostoevsky novella. So I thought it would be fun. Hey, we read Russian in January. Let's read something French in February. So I put up a poll, and the book that won was The Black Tulip by Alexandre Dumas. I'm really looking forward to reading this. It sounds really intriguing. So I guess it's about the tulip craze that happened, but I think that there might be like some mystery and murder that's surrounding it as well. Like, I don't know anything about the tulip craze, and I didn't even know it was a thing until I found out that this book existed. So I'm fascinated by it and I can't wait to try it out. It's a shorter work by Dumas, and so far I've only read his bigger books. So I've read The Count of Monte Cristo, which is arguably his most well-known book and also probably his longest, but I've also read The Three Musketeers, also well-known. I really love The Count of Monte Cristo. Like, it was my favorite book when I was in high school, and as a young adult, I would list it as my favorite book quite frequently. I reread it a couple of years ago and still really enjoyed it. So I had mixed feelings about The Three Musketeers. I didn't enjoy it as much, but it's probably been a good 10, maybe even 15 years since I've read it. So I'm really excited to read something else by him, especially something that's a shorter work, because I don't think I've read anything by him that wasn't like super thick. The book that I will be reading with my in-person book club is Death Comes for the Archbishop by Willa Cather. I don't know really very much about this at all. I remember Christy Lewis from Dostoevsky in Space like obsessively loving this book when she read it a couple of years ago. And that was kind of what turned me on to Willa Cather. And so far, the past couple of years, I've read several Willa Cathers and just loved everything I have read by her. So I'm really interested to read this one. I don't really know much about the plot. I think that we follow like some monks or some priests or something like that in New Mexico. So it's a very different setting than her other books that I've read. Almost everything else that I've read by her has been set on the Nebraskan prairie. So this is going to be quite a different vibe. And I'm really, really interested to see what that's like. And the last buddy read that I have going on for the month of February is I have been reading Anne of Green Gables with Stephanie from Miss Richards Reads, and that has just been so lovely. And then Chantel from Chantel Reads All Day has been hosting a year of Maud. And so she was also reading Anne of Green Gables in January and is continuing with Anne of Avonlea in February. So Stephanie and I will also be reading Anne of Avonlea in February. We're just going to be reading one Anne book a month until we get through the entirety of the series, which does not perfectly line up with Chantel's schedule because she has some other books thrown in there. So it's not just all the Anne books back to back. There's a couple of months where she has some other books in there as well. But Stephanie and I are just reading straight through the Anne series, and I'm really excited to reread this one. I reread it a couple of years ago with my daughter, so I do remember a lot about it, especially because like the movie adaptation, which I grew up with, follows this pretty closely. So I'm really, really excited to continue on with Anne. I just love Anne. This is actually, I think, my daughter's favorite of the series because she loves Davy, because he's just so hilarious and just gets into so many hijinks, which is something that you don't see in the Anne of Green Gables adaptations, that Marilla and Anne adopt a couple of twins, but they play a very prominent role in this book. I have a couple of nonfiction that I'm hoping to get to in the month of February. So one is actually a continuation of We Love Jenny, and I've gotten about a quarter of the way through this book by the time the end of January has hit, and that's Peter the Great by Robert K. Massey. This is a huge book, so I'm fine with the fact that I haven't gotten, like, I didn't finish it in January. I didn't intend to. I knew it was going to take me a little while. So this is on my list, and I've been listening to it pretty much on audio more than I've been reading it physically, and I am enjoying it, so I'm going to continue with that. I also really want to read, and it's pointless for me to even hold this up because you can't read the spine, there's nothing on the cover, but this is The Four Loves by C.S. Lewis, and I haven't read any C.S. Lewis in a little while, and I really, really want to because I love him. I think he's such a profound writer. But I really want to read this one because February has Valentine's Day in it. And so it feels perfect to do The Four Loves. I could read like one love a week and finish this book by the end. But it just sounds like such a perfect time to read this book. So that's my official TBR of all the books that I am planning to read in the month of February. I didn't make kind of like a loosey-goosey like pile of possibility list for you this month like I did in January because I do have so many books that I'm actually like officially reading this month, whether they be buddy reads or for readathons or things like that. So I decided that I was not going to make a pile of possibilities list. I do have a couple of books kind of like floating in my brain of books that I want to read, whether they're like a fantasy series that I want to start or continue, or, I had thought that, like, I might read some of like my friends' favorite books of the year last year. But I also recognize that February is the shortest month of the year. And so maybe I don't need to have like an ambitious pile of possibilities to choose from. I can just be content with the books that I have on this list so far. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. What are your reading plans for February? Obviously, there's Febregency, but I've also seen like February, and like there's so many fun read-alongs and readathons that happen during the month of February. So I'd really love to hear what your reading plans are. What are you the most excited to read? And if there's any books that I mentioned on my TBR that you have read, I would love to hear your thoughts on those as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please hit like and also subscribe so you can continue to see more bookish content from me. And I will see you again next time.